I'm very happy to present our project on gender health inequalities. So GENDHI, the name of the project for gender health inequalities, is a multidisciplinary project conducted by a sociologist Maria Damo, an economist Pierre Joffard, an epidemiologist Michelle Kelly-Irving, and myself, a sociologist and a demographer. So as you can see on this map, women do have a higher life expectancy than men at birth in all countries over the world. And this may look a simple issue, but it is not. First, the female advantage is much lower when considering healthy life expectancy. Second, this health gender hierarchy is opposite to the one observed in other main social spheres such as education, work, politics, where women are clearly disadvantaged. Indeed, gender health inequalities is a complex issue. And to illustrate this complexity, let's take the example of cardiovascular disease. So, men have a higher rate of cardiovascular disease as shown on the map. Why? They are more likely to smoke, we know, to be overweight, which are risk factors of cardiovascular disease, as adults and as teenagers. Are they less sensitive to health issues since boys are less taught to listen to their bodies? This raises a first question of gendered bodies being constructed through life course. Then, although women have less cardiovascular disease, and this is a very important issue, they are more likely to die from it. Why? Is it because they receive lower quality medical care? Is it because they delay access to care since they often do not recognize their symptoms? Is it because girls are often taught to think of their disorders as psychological? And this raises another very important question of gender bias in healthcare. So, how does this construction of gendered bodies vary? How do these gender bias in healthcare vary according to age and race, ethnicity, and social class, and why? Are these processes similar or different across pathologies, and why? All these questions need to be investigated by different disciplines. So, very shortly, because of time, for the sake of time, what do we know about gender and health? I would say first that we should note that publications on gender and health have grown exponentially in recent years. When you look at PubMed, for instance, you can see that there is an exponential increase on publication on gender and health. On the one hand, we find many descriptive studies which confuse sex and gender. On the other hand, studies that rely on theoretical models that are not often grounded on data. Many of them do not address men's health, and few combine social and biological perspective. Finally, few of them concern Europe, as you said before, and few are multidisciplinary. So there is a real need to go beyond comparisons of prevalence and to try to understand the processes that construct gendered health inequalities over the life course, and once again, this requires a multidisciplinary perspective. So, to analyze the processes that construct gender health inequalities, we have built this conceptual framework, and I hope you can see it on the slide. You can see we will be studying in the life course perspective two analytical moments. First, the embodied health in green, which means the way gendered bodies are constructed from the cradle to the grave, and the way we are exposed to various risk factors, including occupational health from childhood onwards. Second, we will study what we call the healthcare cascade, in orange on the slide, that goes from perceiving or not your symptoms to being or not in contact with the healthcare systems, to differential forms of treatment, or even quality of care, and finally, to differences in compliance and follow-up between men and women. And you can see on this slide, which is very important, and I'm referring to the previous presentation, if we insist on the issue of gender, all the analyses are intersectional. And from all these steps, we are taking into account gender, class, and racialized positions in an intersectional perspective, theoretical perspective. So, our ambition is to tackle the question of the intertwined relations between the social and the biological. And we are taking into account the fact that the biological may impact the social, but first and foremost, we will demonstrate how the social becomes biology. We use gender defined as, in a sociological perspective, as a social system of hierarchy and representations between the sexes as our key concept. This is why our project is called GENDHI. Although, as I have just said, but I really insisted on this point, we develop an intersectional approach. We will also endeavor to combine concepts from various disciplines. And for instance, socializations and embodiment, the way society actually builds the individual. You talk about embodiment, a concept which comes from Nancy Krieger, and sociologists call about socialization. And by discussing between sociologists and epidemiologists, we discover that these two concepts of socialization on the one hand and embodiment on the other hand are very close, and discussion between different disciplines are very fruitful. And the same for sociologists or demographers talking about trajectory or biography, and epidemiologists talking about life course, the dynamic process through which health inequalities are constructed, and also very close discussion between epidemiologists and sociologists between intersectional approach and multivariate analysis. Finally, we are eager to discuss the issue of causality from the perspective of different disciplines. Oh, I forgot to show you this slide. So, why a French focus for the GENDHI EHESS-funded project? Just to say that we will examine a very complex problem, as you know, which we wish to answer globally, and not only shed light on some of its aspects. This is why GENDHI is, first, a multidisciplinary approach, sociology, demography, economic, epidemiology. And second, a project where quantitative and qualitative studies will be combined on the very same questions on 4 different gender pathologies. And given this range of disciplines, methods, and pathologies, and since we want to thoroughly analyze the processes that construct gender health inequalities, we have chosen intentionally to focus on one country. To put this model to the test empirically, we choose to focus on 4 pathologies which are widely prevalent in European countries. And we selected them because each of one provides a different angle on gender, both in terms of prevalence, diagnosis, and/or treatment. First, we focus on hypertension and myocardial infarction, which are, in France, but not only in France, in many European countries and in the States, underdiagnosed among women, in women. The second pathology is depression, which is, oppositely, underdiagnosed in men. And the third pathology is colorectal cancer, which is easy diagnosis with biomarkers, and where we could find no specific gender bias because of the biomarker diagnosis. And finally, COVID-19, which was not, I have to say, initially planned, but we were caught up with the pandemic, and it's a very important, very interesting pathology, since gender clearly intersects with race and class to in this specific issue of COVID-19. So we have three main sources data in GENDHI. First, and I'm not going to spend many times on the methodological issues, just to tell you that we are relying on large French cohort studies which have data on social, biological, healthcare, and administrative data, which are mainly epidemiological huge cohort studies. Secondly, and which is also very important, is primary data collections with qualitative fieldwork, which will fill important knowledge gaps from a gender perspective through family monographies, hospital ethnographies. And for instance, as you understood, I forgot to say that at the beginning of my talk, I do not have yet many results to present because the project started 1 year ago. But we, for instance, for a familial monography, we have a postdoctoral student who are mainly almost living within families to study day by day what is happening, how girls and boys are considering health issues by the parents when they go to the doctor, what's happened, etc., etc., etc. So it's a very in-depth qualitative analysis. And the third data that we are using is medical guidelines and medical recommendations from scientific societies for the 4 pathologies to examine their potential gender bias. Just to give you an example, the European Society for Cardiology, for instance, produced recommendations, medical guidelines, which enjoin medical doctors not to propose the same kind of diagnosis and treatment for men and women after adjusting for age and type of symptoms, which is so strange. I mean, once you consider for the same age group and the same kind of symptoms, men and women, why do you offer them different diagnosis and treatment perspective? So we are, it's okay. So we are analyzing the medical guidelines, and we are looking back to the studies on which they rely. And as was said this morning, most of the studies are based on men's reports and do not include women. So just to conclude, I would say that all this work is developed by the 4 PIs. I am the coordinating PI of the GENDHI project, but thanks to the finance, the funding by the synergy of the European Commission, we were able to hire many research students, and so we have now something like 20 research students, PhD students and postdoctoral students in epidemiology, sociology, demography, all of them working on the framework, the theoretical framework for the 4 pathologies. So we are trying to build a kind of puzzle to illustrate the different steps of the construction of gender health inequalities throughout lifetime with different methodologies and different theoretical background. So, in a nutshell, we are committed to produce original knowledge on gender health inequalities. We are trying to develop an innovative and comprehensive model that could accelerate research on gender health inequalities across different European countries. We are training a generation of young researchers in multidisciplinary perspective. We are trying to organize every week meetings to all the students to share knowledge with epidemiology and sociology and demography and economy. And we are trying to ensure the societal impact of our findings. And finally, we will try to check the boundaries within social sciences and in their relation with biomedical sciences. And we will have 6 years to fulfill all these promises. Thank you for your attention, and I'm very pleased to answer your questions.